This is my own introduction. I've worked as a consultant, done hundreds and hundreds of projects similar to this, not in scale. Every project's different. I did have some on this scale, but they're quite complicated when they get quite big. But it's like the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant? And you eat it one bite at a time, and I think that's how you would do this sort of project if you actually moved it forward. It's a fantastic facility, fantastic amenity, and it is being treated as if it's a liability, not an asset. That's really what's happening. I am from Belcoo, and if we had someone like that on our doorstep, I think we would be really fighting hard for it like you are going to. £5 million has been put into it in terms of in capital investment. It's well kitted out for equine activities. It's got huge potentials, over 200 acres in size. And on a facility of that nature, I think if you can't make it work, there's something wrong. The fact that the council is proposing to just transfer it off in a process which is guided by economic concerns overwhelmingly is a disgrace. And the fact that they haven't had meetings like this for the last 10 or 20 years is also a disgrace. This is a facility that should have been dealt with years ago. I know that there are people in this room who have tried in their own way to try to advance this, and they haven't been able to succeed for various reasons. I believe, and I would urge them to get behind this, because I think that if we don't, I think that the economic will determine, and these facilities will be sold off bit piecemeal, as they already have been, by the way, to some extent. I'll just go through my presentation. So, I was asked really about, the big question is people don't have confidence that we can get funding. It is a difficult era for funding. There are a lot of pressures on finances, but I believe the main issue with any project in my experience is the will. Is there the will out there to make it work? If there's the will, there's the way. That's the general truth. And I do believe that even if it's quite difficult to get funding, if there was the will, you could actually see quite a good project. But I don't think it would succeed in stage one. You'd have to probably take it in a number of phases. That's the reality. What you need to do is consider an alternative. So how do we go forward? Well, it needs to be, as there is today, and I think it's almost a paragon of it, that there's an open, inclusive, participative, and structured process. And that means really engaging all the different stakeholders. Not every idea that comes forward will work. Not every suggestion will make it to the final process. If you can stop the parallel economic-driven process within the council, we need to have a process that's led by stakeholders, and it should be supported by the council. The council has a clear role and responsibility to support the process, but it needs to come from the stakeholders. There is, I think you've heard a number of suggestions. They're not in any way exhaustive around things like equine therapy and making it into a training facility, or making it into, or maybe putting on events and so on. You could bring in considerable revenue. The overall revenue needed to keep the thing going is not huge, as I'll see in a moment. But it's the capital investment, probably the bigger side of the equation. But again, there's ways and means around that. I would have thought, looking at the scale of it, you're talking about a community-private sector partnership in a form probably led by the community itself in the development trust model, which with the next speaker will really give much more detail on. The key objections, the people will often say this is not possible, or this is just not going to happen. Inadequacy of funding is usually the big issue. You've got a big castle there and it's going to cost a lot of money to even keep it standing, frankly. So that's a big issue, true, but I'll address that hopefully. The lack of community social capital, that can be a problem at times, but I know that there are people in this community with huge social capital, and I believe that there's untapped resources in that regard. And I also believe that this is not just something that is owned and run by the community in Irvinstown. This is a county facility. This is a regional facility potentially. This is a really big project. And the fact that it's at this stage that we have to start fighting back is quite a testimony to the lack of ambition and the lack of civic leadership. But in terms of community capital, I think we can get people in here from all sorts of directions with all sorts of skills, because there's all sorts of potential in such a huge facility. There has been previous institutional failure. Yes, there has been without doubt, but that doesn't mean that we won't have success in the future. The scale of the undertaking and the complexity of it is difficult, but if it gets really bad, what you could do is hire someone, lease it out, or sublease, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of possibilities. At the moment, the key thing is to safeguard the castle, safeguard the grounds, bring them back under some form of local accountability and utility, and to prioritise the things you want to save right now. And then later on, I think you could go on to develop this and that, other aspects of it with time. There's a difficulty and maybe a resource demand, which the council will tell you, we don't have the resources, we don't have the capacity to support this sort of a project. I don't think that's an adequate thing. The key thing, however, is lack of will, whether it's the will in this room, the will of those who are stakeholders, the will of those who want to stop this going down the wrong road, or is there a lack of will maybe in the council to stop the easy solution? It is really easy. The easiest thing you can do to sell something off to get rid of it. That's the abandonment of vision, the abandonment of action, the abandonment of an activist approach. So what we're saying is, let's be ambitious. Let's take something very positive. So that's the the objections that could be given. Funding, I haven't been in any way exhaustive. All I want to do is show that there's a wide variety of potential support for capital investment. There's a number of sources. I don't know if you can read these things. It's probably very small up there. It certainly will get too small close on. There's a number of key funds: the Heritage Lottery Fund, the Architectural Heritage Fund, the listed buildings grant aid, and so on and so forth. And I'll just run through some of them. All these funds could, you'd probably want to negotiate your way around it with, first thing you do is, if this is stepping a few steps ahead, but I'm just trying to show you that if you did get to that phase, there is money, there is resources out there for these sort of listed buildings. Now, it isn't always easy to get that money drawn down, but if, again, as I say, if you've got a very powerful and determined group of people, it's very hard to stop, and because you won't give up and you will find a way, and politicians can make things happen. That's the way things work in Northern Ireland, let's be honest. So the Heritage Lottery Fund, this is probably the main fund for a lot of these sort of projects. They have a website, you can go onto the page there. I've got a load of detail, I'm not going to bore you with it. The Architecture Heritage Fund, this is a UK-wide, London-based charity. It provides funding for listed buildings and so on. It also, a lot of these groups actually provide real access to other funds, because there are actually hundreds and hundreds of potential funds. That's the thing, and you just got to keep going at them sometimes to get the money drawn down. The listed buildings grant aid, this was something that used to exist and has been cut back with the generalized cuts, but I believe that there'll be something, if this doesn't be brought back into place, there'll be something to replace it overall, and we're kind of in an interim period really in terms of funds. There's a gap in funds, especially with the European stuff happening. There's a lack of certainty around funds, but there will be funds coming. There's always new initiatives. There's always a need for these sort of things, and many of the projects I work with, like I'm just thinking of Nissan and some of the ones in the south, they had to wait years sometimes to get the funding that really needed to get them right across the line. These projects can take decades, frankly, but you don't scare yourself by thinking it's going to take so long and we're not going to. You don't go into something expecting it to happen straight away. These things, you've got to safeguard the facility, you've got to prevent it from being sold off, you've got to make sure it's used by the community as much as it can in the meantime, and then later on, bit by bit by bit, maybe you just do the first work to stop the building falling down. Then you do the work to maybe develop this bit or that bit or put a roof on or whatever. And then you have space in place. This is finished, but this is again an example of a type of fund run with support from the Northern Ireland Executive. There will be probably a fund to come in on the back of this one. This one was administered by CFNI. And then there are, as I said, a huge variety, hundreds and hundreds of potential funders, organizations, all sorts of charities and so on, that just want to fund projects that are meaningful. And if you've got all these sort of, you're hearing about equine therapy and all this, there's lots of people who just have an interest in that sort of thing. They may just be, like I haven't checked it out, but it might be a fund specific for services for autistic people. You know, that's the sort of thing you can just draw down very easily. There are these grant trackers and fundraising things, and Laurie McCusker runs one, I think, out of the Fermanagh House. When you get down to this stage, what I'm trying to get across is that if if you get to the stage where you have saved the facility from being handed out to some private sector operator or somebody who's just going to put money first, you're going to be able to find things. You have to have confidence in that. That's the thing. But to get to that stage, you need to be given the space and the support by the council and by its facilities to take it forward. There is central government funding. DARG's probably the most obvious one. They've already put quite a bit of money in there, but there's a large history with DARG and the council on that facility. And I think it may be the case that if the council was handed over to someone else, DARG would become much more favourable towards the facility. OFM DFM had the SIF fund, which you probably heard about on the television. That's closed now, closed earlier on this year. But this SIF will probably be replaced by something similar. And again, as been mentioned, tourism, there's accommodational issues in Fermanagh. We have an undersupply, certainly of hostels. We've got no hostels in the county, I think. But we have an undersupply in general in terms of facilities. And there was something come up earlier on about making the county. It was said in 2006, 2007, our goal was to make Fermanagh the third number 3 in Northern Ireland for tourism nights. Such is the lack of ambition that we're now, I think we're 6 going on to number 7. We've went down the list rather than going up because we haven't actually invested that much in tourism infrastructure. And we've got a huge resource and we haven't put the money into it or any thought. 3 minutes, I'm about to finish, right, okay. Invest NI will possibly support tourism projects which are non-accommodational in form. And then you've got the council itself. The council have full responsibility at the moment for the maintenance of Necarne Council and the public access to Necarne Castle and the public access to the estate. Interestingly, just a note, Fermanagh District Council bought the site for 211,000 approximately, and they sold one portion of the land around the car park for more than 2 million, and they also made lease income from DARD of 500,000. And they've done maintenance work on the site of 144,000 in 13 years. So they're up at least 2.2 million on the site. Now I know that they've done investment on capital development works, but those capital development works are part of the asset. So the council, I think, has a responsibility here. It's up on this, and I think that given its potential regional significance, we should have a much greater focus. A minute and I'm nearly there. So, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council need to provide support to the community, to stakeholders, to convert a financial liability into an asset. There's just rushing really through it now. There's potential for about 25 full-time equivalent jobs equivalents on the site. That's based on the kind of initial estimates from the variety of things that's come forward at the moment. That could easily grow, I would have thought, with a site that big. Depends what you get on there. There's all sorts of income streams. I'm not going to go through them, potential. So the next steps, we need to demand that the council move to terminate the current tender process, which is grounded on financial concerns overwhelmingly. They should then initiate a widespread consultation process, a proper consultation, not the sort of consultation we have in the county development